Hi, and welcome to the Wandering Desk podcast, the podcast about living, working, and generally hanging out abroad, wherever that may be. Today, I have with me Johnny Parsons. Johnny is an English teacher from Cumbria, England. He lives in Lima, Peru, with his wife and their daughter. In this podcast, we're going to be talking about why he and his family moved to Peru, the challenges involved in emigrating, what life's like in Lima, the work, the food, the commute. You will not believe how long he was traveling at one point to get to work on a daily basis. If I asked you to guess, you'd overestimate deliberately because that's what people do, and you'd still guess too low, except maybe not now because you'd probably say like 27 hours or something. Actually, that's still too low. His near miss on a motorbike, why he stopped commuting by motorbike, and finally his tips for other people who are thinking about emigrating abroad as a family. So all that coming up now, I bring you Johnny Parsons. Okay, so Johnny, welcome to the show. Tell us a bit about yourself. Where are you from originally?
Oh, hello, and thank you for inviting me on your show. I'm Johnny. I was born in Cumbria, in Kendal, in the Lake District, and I lived there for a few years as a little boy, and then we moved to Australia in the early 80s, giving away my age, and then back to Cumbria, then across the Pennines to Yorkshire as a teenager, and lived in Yorkshire for a good few years, and then decided to go travelling. But we'll come back to that in a moment. But yeah, I'm from Cumbria. I live in Yorkshire when I'm not in Peru, so I consider myself a Cumbrian Yorkshireman, a Northerner.
Fellow Northerner. So essentially, because I'm a Lancastrian, I'm from the northwest, as you may be aware, and
Oh, nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that at all.
I feel like the way you say that there might be, but thanks for the reassurance. So you were living in Yorkshire. What on earth possessed you to up sticks and move to Lima in Peru?
Change of circumstances. And when anyone says change of circumstances, normally it involves a relationship breakdown, which it was basically. A long-term relationship which broke down. I fancied traveling, and as it happens, I went Christmas shopping the day after an office party. Didn't feel like shopping. Went to cinema to suffer with a hangover instead, and saw an amazing film called Touching the Void. Huge cliche, see a film, don't try to follow it. I'd read the book because I've always liked climbing. And basic synopsis, true story, two British climbers who go to Peru and bad things happen. And it just inspired me. I didn't do any homework at all, but I kind of started the ball rolling, sold my house, sold my camper van, sold everything, gave my job up, went to Peru expecting to land surrounded by mountains and llamas, landed in Lima surrounded by chaos and traffic and no mountains. But there are other adventures to be had.
No, I've been to Lima as well, and so I can recognize that description. I mean, Peru is an amazing country, but yeah, Lima is, it's not the Andes for sure.
No.
What after that experience, though? What was it about that experience that made you want to come back?
I think it was just at first it was such a huge change, and the fact I was going around the world on a round the world ticket, and Peru did change my life, and I travelled to different countries, but I had planned to go back from after South America and New Zealand, Australia, back via Southeast Asia and China. And I thought, I'm going to get back home. I'll have no money, no job, no house, nothing. I just didn't really fancy starting from scratch again. So I thought, well, cut the trip short. With the money I've got, go back to Peru and try my hand. But as you can't go backwards on a one-way ticket, on a round-the-world ticket, I should say, I went back to UK, got a one-way ticket, and went back out to Peru. And it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy. The first time I was part of a volunteer placement, and pretty much everything's sorted for you. You live with a local family, you have a group of friends automatically, Whereas the second time, I found I had no contacts, which is important in Peru, no friends as such, and it was just really hard actually getting a job. Um, so at one point, I was doing 6 different jobs, and I just spent all day traveling to job to job to job to job to job.
And these were all what, English teaching?
Yeah, teaching English in the businesses, in academies, institutes, and I did get a job in a school, which was kind of my dream goal. But bizarrely, ironically, when I got it, it just didn't pan out as I expected. And then a few months later, I just decided, well, go back to England. Missed on one detail there. I actually got married in this time as well. Met a girl I hadn't met once before, exactly a year earlier, and got married to my long-suffering wife. And we both decided to come back to UK. That was back in 2007, I think it was.
So, I mean, what this podcast is about is the life abroad in a lot of ways. It's about going, living and working in other places. So, in that first stint, and when you got married and then you both went back to the UK, that's essentially what she was doing. You know, she'd taken this big leap into the unknown, into Yorkshire, and she'd lived with you there. How do you think that was? I mean, how was that experience seen from your point of view? You know, how was that sort of acclimatizing as a couple whose roots are separated by thousands of miles, acclimatizing in one country?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I think it was exactly the same for Lina, my wife, as it was for me. She adapted really well because it was a huge change leaving Lima, the city, to come to UK to live in a completely different country, different language, different climate, different people, different everything. So yeah, it was tough. It was tough because it's sometimes hard to make friends with people from a different culture, good, close friends, just because of cultural differences. But yeah, she adapted super quickly. Actually, did lots of studying, found a job, and did a job that I personally couldn't do in Spanish in Peru. I am an English teacher, so by that, I spend most of my day talking in English. Whereas if you said to me, okay, you're teaching Spanish, I'd say, well, no thanks.
Okay, and then, but at some point, you made the switch and you both moved back to Peru. So tell us about that. What was what was the decision-making factor there?
I think the fact that Peru was so different and the fact I had such a great time or such an amazing time, especially the first time, I came back to the UK and we were starting from scratch, absolute from zero. We lived in a caravan for a year to save up money for a house from scratch, from zero. We had nothing basically, but we had the support of my family, which was brilliant. But kind of financially, we had nothing. So I got a job which paid well. I can't say where it was. Hard work, working shifts, good money, and we just lived a year of doing very, very little, just saving up and living in a caravan. So sacrifice enabled us to get enough money for a deposit for a house just before the banks went crash. And the thing is, I never really settled back in the UK. I never found a job that I really wanted to do. And I think when I did find a job, twice in fact, I wasn't in the right frame of mind. I was just really, really unsettled. I think the traveling had unsettled me. And so one job in particular, it was on paper, it was my dream job. But at the back of my mind, I was always thinking, okay, what could be out there in Peru? What did I miss? What are the other possibilities? And in the meantime, a good friend of mine moved to Peru, and he told me about all the changes and all the opportunities, which unsettled me even more, to the point where the job I was doing, the main job, the well-paid job. I left there and went back 5 times in the space of 7 years, which is bonkers. It's absolutely ridiculous. But I just wasn't settled. And going back to Peru for trips now and again unsettled me even more. Then we had a baby. That she came along 2014. And I kind of gave up on the idea then of going back. I thought, well, things change. But then my wife caught me off guard one day. I'd had a bad shift at work. She said, well, she wanted to go for a long stay. I said, well, no, let's just go back. And she had warned me about everything, all the bad things, because she wasn't keen on going back. But I said, go on, let's try it. And we did go back. It was New Year's Day, 2015.
Right, and this is a bit that I find fascinating, because for me, and for a lot of people who travel around solo, and you move to a new country, I mean, it's really quite easy, because you're just doing it on your own. You only really have to look out for yourself in that respect, and you're only thinking for one person. And of course, you got friends back home, and of course, I say easy, it's all relative. And for a lot of people, they couldn't imagine the idea of leaving the job, and they wouldn't even know where to start. I know that a lot of people people are sort of tied into silly things like the rental contract on the mobile phone or whatever else, and so they find it difficult to move away. But in comparative terms, if you do it by yourself, it's quite straightforward. But the upheaval involved in moving as a family unit from one place to another, that seems to be significantly more. I mean, how different was it moving over there as a family to moving over the first time, if you can call it moving, when the first couple of times?
The first time I went, the moment you cancel your last direct debit is quite strangely satisfying. And traveling on your own, you can do what you like. It's great. You can be sociable and meet people, or you can just withdraw into yourself and just do whatever you like or nothing. If you're with somebody else traveling, you kind of got 2 people to please, and again, it's almost a compromise. Going back to Peru as a family, kind of emigrating with a 9-month-old baby, people thought I was absolutely nuts, and I think they probably were right. I hadn't thought of practicalities. In Peru, there's no kind of national health care. You have to pay for education. And finding a job, I'm not a money person. I mean, the job that I've had that paid the best was a job that I hated the most. But yeah, going there, people thought we were crazy, but no one said don't do it. And we did go on a kind of trial basis, but we just kept extending the trial a bit longer. But I'll be honest, it was much, 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 much harder to adapt as a family, because as a parent, you were constantly looking out, trying to find the best for your family, and you do change. A little switch is flicked inside you, and you're looking out for the dangers, and it's just very, very different. People see things differently, and I'm not saying it's a dangerous place, but it's definitely a much more hazardous place. There's less attention paid to some things which in the UK we take for granted. Whereas the part of town where I live in Lima, I could get run over potentially 10 times a day. It's just, different laws, different rules, different attitudes. It was a big step. It was a huge step.
So tell me about some of that life in Lima then. I mean, what's the place like where you live?
Well, I should add that I've actually moved house. Last count was 38 times. We've moved house 3 times since we moved back to Lima. I'm always trying to find something not better, just trying to find a balance. And we moved back to a place where Lina came from, but that changed a lot because there's a lot of development, a lot of construction in Lima. So we moved there, wasn't ideal, moved to a different place, and was even worse. So we moved back to where we were originally. But obviously the problems we moved away from, essentially the noise, hadn't changed. It got worse. But noise is just one thing that's you kind of have to adapt to or go mad with in most of Latin America, to be honest. Not just Lima. It's not just restricted to Lima. It's definitely a different attitude about noise. I've come back to UK now, and I'm just loving. No, I have enjoyed the peace and quiet, and you just don't get it. Don't get that. It doesn't exist. And the only time I've actually found it in Peru was in a recording studio when I did an audio book. But no, peace and quiet, forget it. Doesn't exist.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I can relate to that. And I've spent plenty of time in Latin America myself. I absolutely adore it. There's not a place I've been that I didn't like. And, one of the things I found, however, that, for instance, you can go hiking in the mountains and people will get the phones out and play music. So like the kind of thing that I would associate with solitude and nature is no, it's another opportunity to play music and whatever else. There's just a very different cultural attitude towards sound and the stuff that is sort of just a normal part of your everyday background in Latin America would be considered noise pollution, I think, in the UK.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I should stress, I don't want to sound negative about the place. Peru's a wonderful place. There's so much scope for everything and so much to see. Cultural, historical, physical. It's an amazing place. It's a real gem. Um, I just personally I have struggled with noise because I came from the country. I was brought up pretty much on a farm in the sticks, and it's quite hard to go to a city. I think Lima's the 12th most populous country city in the world, and just the quantity of people and silence is almost seen as bad. It's strange. People have TV on for background noise. People wake up, crank up the stereo. Don't see anything wrong with it, and there isn't really, because in a different culture, there's different ideas. So things that do kind of drive me mad, if I'm honest, really it's just me driving mad because other people just yeah, a party. It's no big deal. But having worked shift for 7 years, working shifts, if you don't get your sleep, you can never recover that sleep. So you get grumpy. So yeah, I'm a bit of a grumpy bear at times, despite wearing earplugs.
Well, yeah, the old trusty earplugs. I have to say, I travel everywhere with earplugs and an eye mask. And I'm at the point now where if I'm not wearing my eye mask and I'm not wearing my earplugs, I can't actually sleep. I'm actually attuned to it. I can sleep anywhere if I have them. And they don't block everything out. But at the same time, if I'm not wearing them, I feel like I'm not. It's like it'd be like driving a car without a seatbelt on. You just feel like, wait, whoa, something's wrong here. It's hard for me to do. So moving on, what is it that your job is now? You were talking about English teaching. Is that your main job in Peru?
Yeah, it's my only job. I was very lucky. I worked in the orphanage first, and I worked in various language schools, academies, also school. Then when I came back to Peru, as most kind of expat immigrants, gringos, whatever you want to call them, start to work in, it's basically teaching English in different businesses. And it's quite easy to get into. You generally have lessons before office hours, lunchtime, after office hours. It's great because it's quite flexible. The bad side is working split shifts. You're working 3 shifts, morning, noon, and night. So you've got lots of free time, but you have to get around the city, which is a challenge in itself. But from there, I was lucky to get into a company. I worked for a company called Britannico, who are also a cultural organisation, and it's a brilliant. It's probably the best job I've ever had. It's well organised. It's got good management. Has motivated students generally. Huge amounts of opportunities. I've done some acting. I've done the audiobook, as I mentioned. I've done 2 commercials, and this was just from no background of drama or anything at all. Just offered, volunteered, and yeah. So I love it. I've got great colleagues. I've got brilliant bosses. So my job keeps me sane. I absolutely love my job. Teaching is the best job in the world. On a good day, it's amazing. When a student gets something or something clicks, it's priceless. On a bad day, it's not that bad. No one dies. Nothing really changes. It's as jobs go. I love it. You'll never be a millionaire, but who wants to be a millionaire? Not me.
So, how about one thing that I am aware of, because I've heard you talk about it before, or I've certainly seen you write about it on your erstwhile blog. Tell us about your commute to work. How does that look?
Right now, it's just about to change again. I can walk. The thing about Lima, there's 12 million people all trying to get somewhere at the same time, usually late. So traffic is gridlocks. There isn't rush hour. It's just rush hour is practically it's all day, basically. And so if you're traveling over kind of, I'm very metric minded nowadays. If you travel more than kind of 3 or 4 miles on a bus, you are talking probably potentially up to an hour. I take my daughter to school, and that's 5 miles away. It takes an hour via 2 buses. The bus system's it's a double-edged sword. It's good because it's cheap, and there are lots and lots of buses. You never wait long. You never ever wait more than kind of 5-10 minutes, if that, for a bus. The flip side, it's unsafe. It's kind of dangerous, the whole informal bus system. I did have a motorbike. Come back to that. Right now, I'm doing what is the best way of keeping sane. I'm going to be able to walk to work, because walking, you know how long it's going to take you. I moved to a different property, and it was like 6 miles away, and that would take me anywhere between an hour and 2 hours plus. There's no way of knowing. So it's very hard to plan your day without arriving super early or mega late.
So, how many hours a day then do you spend typically, or have you been spending traveling, commuting essentially?
Well, when I went back to Peru this time, 2015, I was spending kind of 8 hours commuting and 6 hours working. No, probably less, probably kind of 4 or 5 hours working.
Per week, I guess, not a day.
No, per day. Per day. I would get up at 5:30, leave the house at 6, take me an hour and a half to get to my first job, teach an hour and a half. And I had this frustrating situation where I had just enough time to get home, but not enough time to do anything when I got there. So get home, have a cup of tea, go back out again, another hour and a half commute, another hour and a half teaching, another commute, probably back home, and then quick cup of tea and back out again. Same again, an hour, hour and a half, and then back home 10 p.m. So it's wearing. It's wearing.
This is insane. 8 hours a day of commuting. 8 hours of commuting from job to job. I mean, I've never heard of anyone doing that on a daily basis. Now, from my time in Latin America,
It's not sustainable.
no, it doesn't sound like it. From my time in Latin America, what I remember is being in the bigger cities, and I don't know, I'm sure Lima has changed. It's a good 15 years since I've been there. So, but I remember the sort of cacophony of traffic and cars and taxis, and everything's always changing lane, and then bikes zipping around as well, and little, I don't know if it's what you call it. They have a different name all over Latin America, don't they? But is it like little micro buses going? And
Yeah, the micros and the combis, as called them in Peru. Yeah, the little vans that should have 8 seats and have had all the seats ripped out and another dozen seats installed. Yeah, the combis, the micros.
and they have these sort of slides. You sort of pull the handle and yank the door across. It's one of those sort of slide handle doors, right?
Yes, yeah. And you've got a guy hanging out. He's called the Cobrador, and he's kind of shouting the destinations on the route. And he's kind of semi-communicating with the driver about where to stop and how many passengers are getting on or off. But it does become a race. There's so many rival companies, or even the same company, and everyone is just rushing to get to the next bus stop, in inverted commas, because people just pick up anywhere, really. Getting off the bus never really stops. You are kind of jumping off and hoping you don't fall over. And getting on, there's not much time to find a seat and sit down, if there is a seat. Most of the time you're standing. At first, it was a real adventure. It was like, wow, this is mental. It's so different. Luckily now I get just one bus to work, and it's only maximum kind of 45 minutes on one bus each way. Or on a good day, I can do it in kind of 20. But when I move back, I'm going to a different location and I can walk it, which is, it's dream. If you can live close to where you work or study or where your kids go to school, that's the secret. If you people do commute, people commute 3 hours each way, and that's kind of quite normal without thinking of moving house. Whereas if it was me, I'd say, right, this is no good. It's just waste. It's dead time. Time you never get back. Yeah, reading maybe, but no, it's insanity.
At the same time, I think there's another side, or I see it this way anyway. The last thing I'd want is to actually live right on the doorstep of work, because I don't think I'd ever be able to relax properly. I mean, if I could look out my window and I could see my workplace, I'd find that really stressful, especially as that would probably be two-way. They could look they could look from the workplace and see what I was up to, you know. So like any time that if you ever you know if you ever um, well, if you ever call in sick, they'll be looking at you through the window going, how sick is he? So now, as I recall, actually, I seem to remember you uploading a video at one point of when you used to commute via motorbike to work. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I've always liked bikes. I've always kind of had bikes of some shape or size since I was kind of 17. I did have scooters, Vespas, Lambrettas for quite a few years. That was good fun. I've had bigger bikes. I've had bigger kind of 650s upwards, mid-sized bikes. My favourite bike, which I actually still have back in the UK here, is the old faithful Honda C90, the dream machine. But back in Peru, I kind of said, right, this commuting's got to stop. What can I do? Get a bike. It's obvious. Actually, getting a bike was a red tape exercise because at the time I didn't have residency, and it's very difficult to do anything if you aren't a resident. So I had to get a special stamp on my passport to sign contracts, which gave me a month to find a bike. And it just became this mission in between shifts at work, in between classes. I just go to look at all these secondhand rust buckets or new bikes, and it was just I was running out of time, and I eventually found this nice Honda. You kind of call it like a motocross bike, trials bike. You need something with a bit of suspension because the roads aren't too great. You need a trials bike or a motocross bike. You quite upright, so you get a good view. It's like Ford Transit. I had a Ford Transit which I converted to a camper van. And white van men get bad press. Well, most of it's justified, but the fact is you're elevated so you can see above and beyond the traffic in front. And that's the same with a trials bike. You are, as you're quite high up, you get a good view of things. And the best thing of all, on a weekend, if you get up early, really early, kind of pre-dawn, and get out of the city, there's some amazing trails in the hills, and there's no one there. I had some real adventures. But actually commuting, in the end, for various reasons, after kind of a year and a bit, I thought this is just going to have not a happy ending. So I sold a bike. Yeah, it's always bad selling a bike. It's always hard. But it did cut down on commute time, but you just arrive with your nerves absolutely fried. I mean, I've ridden bikes on and off for 20, 25 years, 30 years. Crikey, I am old. And you would have more close calls and near do's and near misses in one day than I've had kind of most of my life in the UK. You're quite vulnerable on a bike. And I had one, I was clipped. I didn't go down. I didn't hit tarmac, but it just made me think, this isn't going to have a happy ending. So sadly, it had to go. The bike, the red one with no name had to go, which I was gutted about. But yeah, and then I found a job where I could walk to work. So problem was solved.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting you saying about this. I've had my own recent first experience of riding a bike when I was in Bali, and I had a sort of little twist and go scooter type thing that I hired. Well, I hired a few in succession. I think one of the things is that actually when I saw the video that you uploaded, what that struck with me was what you were saying, which was it looked so risky, and that was just a single journey weaving through traffic on the way to work.
Yeah.
And I look at these things quite logically, which is that if something is quite risky and you're going to do it on a daily basis, then that's a bad idea. And really, anything risky, just don't. If you're going to do something repeatedly, then that shouldn't be a thing that's risky, if that makes sense. It's just like, because if you do it in
Yeah.
every day, all you're doing is you're just ramping up the likelihood that something bad's going to happen. I mean, do you think family comes into this? Because again, in the same way we were talking about when you travel, if you travel on your own, you're only really looking out for yourself. And of course, if something bad happens to you, there's always friends and family, unless you're really unlucky, there's always someone there who'd be really tremendously upset if something happened. But you have an elevated level of responsibility, perhaps, if you have your own family. Would you go with that?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%, definitely. It does change you. Anybody who says that they have kids and it doesn't change you, well, I think they're lying. To be honest, it changes the way you think. Basically, when I got clipped, it was quite a straightforward commute with a few kind of hot spots, and I got past all the bad bits, and I was trying to pull in, but the car on my inside wouldn't let me pull in. But I didn't have enough power to go past. The kind of lane system, there's a lot of white paint wasted in Peru because people just ignore the lanes. But on my outside, I saw a truck coming towards me, really close, and he clipped me. He clipped my wing mirror, which flipped the bars round, which means I couldn't control my clutch. And I was trying to get in. This car on the inside wouldn't let me in, and the lats on this truck were just clip, 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 clipping my handlebars. So every kind of 3 seconds, I get a jolt, which just pushed me into this car on the inside. I'm talking, I had just enough room for a bike, but we're traveling at kind of 40, 50 miles an hour on a motorway, and behind me was a fleet of trucks. So if I'd gone down, I would have been brown bread. And that moment, I thought, if I got killed or badly injured, my family rely on me kind of for not just support, but everything. I used to be a climber. Well, I still am a climber. I love climbing. And there's a really incredible guy called Alex Honnold, who was recently nominated for an Oscar, I believe, with Free Solo, which I've loved watching climbing films all my life. But this Free Solo was different. And there was some parts which were really, really uncomfortable because you're thinking, this guy, Free Solo, basically is climbing without a rope. So this Alex Honnold guy was climbing Ed Cap in Yosemite without a rope. And so if he fell at any point, he's probably going to die because we're talking, he's thousands of feet up in the air. He's going to die. But the way he sees it, there is calculated risk and danger. And you weigh it up. And he says himself he wouldn't do anything if he thought he was going to die. He's not stupid. Riding a motorbike in its nature is dangerous. It's risky. It's brilliant. There's nothing like it. A car's not the same. Push bike's not the same either. Riding a motorbike is brilliant. It's the ultimate freedom. I've had some amazing trips and just like journeys. But when you are fighting against the odds every day, is the sacrifice, is the potential risk worth the reward? In that case, I'd say no. Maybe if I was a single guy, I'd have different ideas. Maybe if I was kamikaze, I'd have different ideas. But as a father of a nipper, a 5-year-old, it changed my attitude. And I just thought, you know what? I can't do this. I can't. I get to work and my nerves would just be fried, and I have to compose myself to teach. But yeah, bikes are way down the food chain in Lima, unfortunately.
So, changing subject, what is the life actually like there outside of work and trying to avoid getting hit by vehicles? What do you what does your free time look like? I know this, as as someone who's not married and doesn't have kids, I'm aware that this is almost like this is a question which invites derision, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Yeah. So what does your spare time look like? Your spare in inverted commas time.
It's well, I do have quite a bit of spare time. That's a good thing. If you can get your classes lumped together in one chunk, as I have now, and there's no commute time, I'm teaching 6 hours worth of lessons per day, Monday to Friday, all year, with 1 month off. No kind of ad hoc holidays, no days off apart from bank holidays, but it's 6 hours, which is not a lot. You do, of course, have your preparation on top of that, which is quite a chunk. But most of my free time's in the morning because generally my classes are 2 p.m. onwards till nighttime. So once I've got the little one off to school until lunchtime, my time's my own. So I kind of spend that time either planning classes or reading or running. That's one of my main passions. Or just, yeah, I do have quite a bit of spare time. Most of that's on my own. In fact, it's all on my own, which is not ideal, but you make the most of what you have. So it's quite easy to get to the coast because Lima's on the coast in a desert, bizarrely. There are mountains close to me. They're not the Andes, but they are kind of good for training on dusty slag heaps. There's no life. There's not a blade of grass, no animals apart from rabid dogs, but they're good for adventure. And if you get a bus, you could get somewhere completely in the Andes in 8 hours. You could be in the desert in 4 hours. And if you went inland, you could be in the Amazon, in the jungle, within kind of half a day. So there's plenty of scope for adventure. I mean, Lima itself has seen a lot of inversion. Spanish. Investment. Foreign investment from mining. But mining, that's another story altogether. I did teach in a mining company once, but yeah, I won't go into that now. There's lots of scope. There's lots of scope for all sorts. Entertainment as well. I mean, people are big on the food. I'm not a massive food person, but yeah, there's all types of food on offer. And the rest of it, there's shopping centres, there's places just like in Europe in some parts. But yeah, free time, I do have plenty. I can't moan.
So, what is the food like then? I seem to recall from being there, and also it's kind of well known as being, um, the home of this, which is the potato.
Yes, absolutely.
Is you eating a lot of potato-based dishes?
Normally potatoes with rice, so it's a carbohydrate feast. I can't think of anywhere else in the world where I've been served up rice and potatoes on the same plate. But as a runner, it's ideal. The food, I've got to be very careful here. I do hear every day it's the best food in the world, and it's kind of like the British thing where people talk about the weather. Oh, it's a nice day. You kind of have to agree. It's considered rude not to agree. And I would never say I don't like the food because I do like the food. But there's so many things I do miss from the UK. I think the facts in the Peru, most things are cooked from scratch. There's very few ready meals. There's fast food, obviously, and there's restaurants. But if you are cooking at home, you're cooking from scratch. There's nothing like other than lasagna. You're cooking from scratch, and I think there's enough dishes to cover every single day of the year. Most of them do involve rice or potatoes in some way, but yeah, the food's good.
Yeah, I mean, to touch on what you were just saying there, it's certainly one of the things where whatever your nationality, everyone thinks that their own food's great, and that they have the right to pass judgment on everyone else's food around the world. And it's quite funny when you come away and find, I've discovered, for instance, from living in Poland, that everyone thinks that British food's terrible.
Yeah,
And I think this is a general idea that people have in Europe and maybe other parts of the world as well, that British food is terrible. And of course, I'm thinking that's ridiculous. How could you say that? And and then when you look at it from the outside, well, I suppose it's not high art. One thing I do think about the UK that we do well is Certainly in the big cities, we have a lot of great food from other parts of the world. I think the UK is a great place to come if you like international high standard international cuisine, basically. And that's one of the things I always miss when I go to another country, because I think if you end up in, say, Peru or wherever, you can enjoy the local food. But if you're used to a more varied diet, if you're actually, because in the UK, I think a lot of the time, most people, if you were to break down their weekly diet, it wouldn't be British food. It would be there'd be some British food, but there's going to be some pasta as well. There's going to be some pizza. There's going to be um, you'll have some Indian food, Thai food, whatever. You have all sort of a real wealth of stuff from different parts of the
Yeah.
world. But what I found is when you go to other parts of the world, like for instance, I spent time in Colombia, and what I
Yes.
found there was that um, Colombians love Colombian food, and it's quite hard to get good food from other parts of the world there, except maybe in Bogota, for instance, and maybe some of the places which are a bit more touristy. Um, but I think if I was to live in a place like that, that's what I'd miss most. And certainly in Poland, I moved to Warsaw, and one of the things about that was, I missed having a really broad platter, shall we say, of
Yeah,
different types
absolutely.
of cuisine.
No, I can't agree with you more. It's absolutely
I mean, what do you miss most when you're in?
being a northerner. Pies. I've just been scoffing pies like they're going out of fashion these last 3 weeks. And my daughter, she also likes a pie. She's actually a Yorkshire lass too. So yeah, she's a keen pie fan. I had toad in the hole last night, and it's silly things. I mean, fish and chips, obviously, good curry. But I've also eaten a lot of Italian food, Chinese foods. So you're absolutely right. There's people say in Peru, people say to me, "Well, whoa, what's English food?" I say, "Well, it's very difficult to kind of you give a few examples. You say fish and chips, or spotted dick, or just ridiculous things, or a Sunday roast." Um, but as you say, most people do eat a lot of different types of food in just an average week, and it's not thought of as a special treat or something extravagant. It's just kind of normal. And in Peru, nowadays there is more choice, more choice. Um, in the past, there was an Indian restaurant, but it just did nothing, did no good. And now there's free, and they're kind of okay. But when I do challenge kind of, well, friends, good friends, people who I can have a bit of banter with, when I challenge them on the subject, and they tell me, oh, it's the best food in the world. So, well, have you tried this food? Have you tried that food? Have you tried that food? Well, no. It's just like this. I said, well, it's very difficult to compare a dish with a dish. And like you say, in the UK, I mean, I lived in Leeds many years, and within 100 yards of my doorstep, I'd have at least 5 different types of restaurant I could try at any one time. So little things you miss. It's things like fish and chips because obviously Peru's on the Pacific, so cod or haddock. Um, it's cold water fish, it's Atlantic North Sea, whereas you can't get it. And you could fry fish and you could have chips, but it's never going to be quite the same. Likewise, if somebody brought the ingredients to try and make a dish such as ceviche, which is marinated fish marinated with lime or lemon, I should say. If you tried to make that in the UK, it would be very, very difficult because you don't have all the ingredients you need to make it. So that's why one of my 120-litre holdalls is kind of full of food stash, curry powder, different spices, different herbs, different mixes, things I just can't get.
Yeah, it's interesting you saying about pies, because I like pies. And when I go to other countries that have their own kind of pies, because in South America there's a lot of sort of empanadas and that kind of
Yes, yeah.
thing, then that's also one of my favorite things. And yet at the same time, so I think pies are great. And at the same time, it's like, I think one of the broadening aspects of travel is that um, you sort of get to realize that maybe not everyone's going to think this is great. And certainly when I go back to Wigan, and like they have an advert sometimes in I can't remember which bakery it is, but there's an advert up which is like, why not try a pie balm? It's like, what a
Oh,
balm cake is. This
oh
is
yeah,
this is
yes.
Wigan talk for a bun, because a bun is called different things all over the country. and you're thinking, I like this, but this is not haute cuisine, and or maybe it is if it's done well, but I think it's great. But you can I can see why other people might say, I don't understand why you like that, and I can see the same thing about a lot of our foods. I think British food is sort of well adapted to cold weather. For instance, I'm surprised at Poles, actually, I have to say, who say they don't like or who talk down about British food because in my opinion, it's actually kind of similar. It's heavy food. It's good food for cold. It's good food for cold weather. I actually told a Pole. I don't like saying Pole because it sounds derogatory, but it's not.
Yep.
But I yeah. So I told a Polish friend about I was saying, oh, our food's quite like yours, and she was so deeply offended. But British food's terrible. It's like, well, hold on. What about my feelings? I mean, I'm
Yeah.
not too offended by these things. I've got to say, I always stand up for British cuisine, but I certainly understand how. I mean, that's one of the things. You just basically criticizing any nationality's food is always
Oh,
a fraught subject. So, in terms of the things you were talking about before you went away, that people were saying that they thought you were a bit crazy, that it wasn't a good idea, especially given how young your daughter was at the time. How would you say that this has worked out? I mean, looking back at it, was it, um, were those fears founded and your own fears that you might have had, or was it actually something where you look back and say, "Oh no, that was a doddle"?
um, it's strange. I mean, obviously, having a child is. I've done some kind of difficult things in my life, mainly kind of athletics and like ultra marathons and things in the mountains, climbing trips where you've had to kind of endure some pretty tough conditions or living kind of a Spartan lifestyle. But having a child, it's harder than anything I've ever done by a million miles. The rewards are far better than anything I've ever done, and the low times are far lower than anything I've ever had. So having a child itself it's a big thing, and like I say, it does change you. Uh, has it been a success work wise? Yes, I found a job I love, and for the first time in my life, I've got a boss who thinks I'm all right. Professionally, I'm happy. I've achieved some things which I never thought I would achieve. There's a lot of frustration because it's hard. I found it much harder this time to adapt. Um, I don't know. I can't put my hand on it. I can't put my finger on it. Why? But it's been very difficult, and it's led to some really difficult and perhaps dark times over the last couple of years. Everything's possibly about to change because I'm moving to a different city. I'm moving out of Lima with work, opening a new centre in a different city, second biggest city, but Lima's 12 million people. The place I'm going to is 1.3 million people. And the place I'm going to, a place called Arequipa, which is 16 hours drive down south, is a beautiful place. It's kind of altitude. It's surrounded by volcanoes, so I'll be hopefully climbing on most weekends. And it's much quieter. It's cleaner, and it has been heralded as the Yorkshire of Peru. So I'm keen to find out what it's like. Everything else, has it been a
Well, there's
success?
a few things to. Well, I was going to say there's a few things to pick up on there, which is like, first of all, in what way is the Yorkshire of Peru?
I mean, as I say, I'd consider myself potentially an honorary Yorkshireman. The people from Arequipa are very proud. They think it's the best place in Peru, to the point where they actually want to go solo, go independent, have their own passports, and have their own money. So they're very proud people, quite fiery perhaps. So I can see a lot of similarities there. I love Yorkshire. It's kind of home for me now when I'm not in Lima or Cumbria. I would never ever criticise anything about Yorkshire because I like it, and also for fear of retribution. What would happen? The response I would get, I'd just be roasted. So yeah, I'm keen to see what a different city's like. It's going to be a big challenge professionally, and new people moving away from my family for a while, sadly, but also my handful of friends in Lima. I'm going to miss them a lot too. So it's going to be hard, but I'm looking forward to the new challenges.
So, just to close things off, what advice would you offer to other people thinking about making a move as you did, as a family unit from, from what they've grown up, for instance, and where they're comfortable and familiar with to somewhere entirely new? What tips do you have?
I'd say do your research first, which is something I never do. Do your research first. Make sure your marriage is as strong as possible before you go, because it will be tested to its absolute limits. Um, Patience. I've lost a lot of patience just through kind of circumstances. Just try and be patient, and just don't let the little things grind you down, because if you do, the bigger things will kill you. Things that you can do in the UK, for example, selling a car. Sell a car, someone comes around, kicks tires, gives you 500 quid, you give them the V5, they post it. That would take you a full day in Peru. If you lose a document, that's going to take you a long time to replace. So just kind of be as patient as you can with yourself, with your loved ones, and with other people, but not to the point of being taken advantage of, but patience, yeah. Maybe practice some kind of yoga or meditation or something, because it's testing, but I think as long as you don't let the things grind you down, it's definitely worth it. At the end of the day, it's just so different. And I said to a friend, Peru's not better or worse, it's just different. And it is. I've come back and I've loved being in the UK, but there's some things I do miss from Peru. And so it's a balance. It's all about getting a balance. And if you can get a balance, it's worth all the sacrifices.
Brilliant. Well, many thanks for sharing all that with us, Johnny. You can find links to anything we've discussed in the show notes at wanderingdesk.com. If you have any thoughts or questions, then please do send them to me at podcast@wanderingdesk.com. This is the audience now, not you personally, Johnny. You can just get in touch. And if you want, you can record yourself asking the question and send that in. And then if it's any good, then we'll play it on the program. And if it's rubbish, then we'll just laugh at it, really. So thanks very much for listening, and see you next time.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Adios. Hasta la próxima.